The warning on the pedestal, the plaza, was unnaturally silent. Thousands had gathered beneath the towering spire at the heart of the city, but not one person spoke. Even the ever-present hum of traffic had been rerouted away from Central Square. All attention was locked on the glowing cage mounted on the pedestal, a cage that held something not of this world. Inside stood a being unlike anything humanity had ever seen. 7 feet tall, skin like molten silver, eyes black as vacuum. It didn't snarl or rattle the bars. It just stood there, still, silent, watching. Above the cage, a giant holosign floated in blood-red letters. "Beware, this is not your friend, Jason." Morrow stood near the back of the crowd, his maintenance uniform streaked with grease and rust. He hadn't planned to stop here, just wanted to drop off a parts crate to City Core Systems and go home. But like everyone else in this city, he couldn't help but be drawn toward the spectacle. The alien wasn't what he expected. No fangs, no claws, no aura of menace, just presence. Something heavy about it, like the kind of gravity you feel in the presence of tragedy. It didn't look angry. It looked mournful. The mayor's voice boomed over the square, her image projected 100 feet high on the plaza's edge. "This creature was captured during what we believe was an attempted infiltration of our defense grid. Its species is unknown. Let its imprisonment serve as a warning." The crowd erupted in controlled applause, but Jace didn't move, because something had changed. The alien's gaze had shifted. Out of all the thousands in the crowd, it was looking directly at him. Jace stiffened, a trick of the light. He glanced behind. No one stood close enough. He turned back, and the being blinked. Once, twice, pause, then 3 short blinks. Jace, breath caught in his throat. Morse code. He hadn't used it since trade school, but the memory surfaced fast. He watched, heart pounding, as the alien repeated the sequence. SOS. Jace took a half step forward before stopping himself. He looked around. No one else seemed to notice. The crowd was cheering again. Someone tossed a flag into the air. A child asked for ice cream. But in the middle of it all, the alien blinked a third time. Slow now. Purposeful. 3 dots. 3 dashes. 3 dots. The universal distress call. He couldn't shake it. That night, Jace lay on his back in his cramped Turum unit, ceiling fan spinning overhead, replaying the moment in his head. He told himself he'd imagined it. A glitch in the lighting. A coincidence. But the more he thought about it, the less it felt random. It wasn't just the blinks, it was the eyes. There was intelligence behind them. Not the cold alien kind you see in horror flicks. Something more human. He sat up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and opened his work locker. Inside was a small maintenance pass, level 2 access, enough to get him through side tunnels and maintenance shafts around the city. Nothing fancy, but enough to get him under the plaza. At 2:17 a.m., he emerged from a tunnel beneath Central Square, stepping softly in the shadows behind the pedestal. No security this late, just automated surveillance, and he knew which panels were blind. He climbed the maintenance ladder to the control room, adjacent to the display chamber. Monitors showed thermal readings, life signs, integrity fields. The alien was awake. Jace leaned closer to the observation window. The being stood exactly as before, but when it turned its head this time, it didn't blink. Instead, it raised one long 3-fingered hand and slowly tapped 2 fingers against the transparent wall. Pause. Tapped up. Tap dash tap dash tap dash tap. Jace swallowed. Hard. It wasn't blinking anymore. It was tapping in rhythm. Morse code again. He grabbed a marker from the wall and wrote the pattern on the glass as it repeated. Doan TTRUST. Him's heart pounded in his chest. He felt suddenly, violently aware of how alone he was. "What do you mean?" he whispered without thinking. As if it heard him, the being tapped again. WITCIHH looked around. Still alone, still silent. But now the unease in his spine turned into ice. He stepped back from the window, bumping into a console. A monitor flickered on by itself. Line of static, then words scrolled across the bottom. Return to quarters. He didn't touch anything. You are out of assigned zone. Jace bolted by morning. Nothing had changed in the square. Same cage, same alien, same warning sign. But when Jace opened his locker at work, a folded piece of paper fell out. It was crisp, unmarked. No one ever left him notes. No one even knew his locker code. He unfolded it slowly. 7 words, printed in small block text. Stop, or you'll end up in a cage next. The codes and the leash. Jace stared at the note, the blocky words burning into his mind like an iron brand. Stop, or you'll end up in a cage next. His hands trembled slightly as he refolded the paper and tucked it into his work vest. No name, no signature, no indication of how it got there. Just a threat, a direct one. He looked around the break room. A few co-workers were milling about, laughing, scrolling through their tabs, sipping bitter rehydrated coffee. None of them looked suspicious. None of them even looked up, but someone knew. Someone had seen him last night. He tried to focus. On his rounds, maintenance levels under Sector 4, climate controls on Deck 3. But his mind kept circling back to the alien's message. Don't trust them. Watching, the warnings weren't just paranoia. Not anymore. By the end of his shift, Jace knew he had a choice. Walk away and pretend none of this ever happened, or follow the thread deeper. But the problem was, he already knew too much. And whatever this thing in the cage was, it hadn't threatened him. It had asked for help. That night, instead of going home, Jace took a detour. He made his way to a rundown district just outside the inner loop, where the old data archives used to be stored back before everything went encrypted and cloud-secure. He remembered an old friend of Ethan, someone who used to chase stories before journalism became a government-approved career path. He found her living above a noodle shop, surrounded by dusty servers, analog monitors, and wall charts covered in red strings and scribbled notes. Her name was Lonnie Voss, and she didn't flinch when he mentioned the alien in the cage. Most people don't notice the eyes, she said, handing him a cup of something that smelled vaguely like cinnamon and battery acid, but the smart ones do. The ones who look longer than 5 seconds. You looked, didn't you? He nodded slowly. Lonnie sat cross-legged on the floor, motioning for him to sit. You're not the first, but you might be the last. What do you mean? She tapped a folder beside her. Inside were photos, printed on real paper, grainy, poorly lit shots of the alien before it had been caged. One showed it emerging from a burning structure, another surrounded by black armored soldiers. None of this was public. This thing didn't arrive as a conqueror. Lonnie said it didn't crash land and start a war. It sent a signal, a broadcast no one ever acknowledged. The ship was shot down on entry, and then everything about it disappeared. Until the cage. Jace felt a knot in his stomach tighten. Where did you get these? I had a source, she said quietly. Used to work in central systems. She said they intercepted the alien's transmission, but deleted the logs before it reached the public net. Can you recover the signal? Lonnie raised an eyebrow. You think I haven't tried? That thing was encrypted so hard it might as well be fossilized. Jace hesitated. What if I told you I have access to a few system backdoors from work? That got her attention. Hours later, they were deep in the underbelly of the city's central archive, crouched inside an old data terminal room with analog access. Ports, places the newer systems didn't monitor. Jace fed a cable through the terminal while Lonnie tapped away on a patched-together console that whined with every keystroke. Finally, they hit something, a hidden file, buried under layers of decoy code. When Lonnie decrypted it, the screen flickered out. Then the audio played. A voice, metallic but undeniably sentient, not growls, not roars, not words. To the humans of South 3I, come with urgency. A breach has occurred in the outer belt. Do not allow transmission to pass through your core relay system. If activated, it will. The message cut off mid-sentence. Lonnie sat back, stunned. That wasn't a threat, that was a warning. Jace's pulse raced. A breach, like a wormhole, or a signal. Something worse. Maybe something we don't understand yet. He thought of the alien, its eyes, its Morse code. They weren't locking it away to punish it. They were silencing it. As they gathered their equipment, a soft click echoed in the hall. Then another, rhythmic, sharp. Lonnie froze. Her hand went to the dim light switch. A small black drone hovered into view. Silent. Insectoid. Camera worry. Run. Jace and Lonnie bolted through the corridor as the drone shot a stun pulse at the wall beside them, leaving a black scorch mark. They darted into a side hall, knocking over crates and cabling, zigzagging through shadow until they reached an old stairwell. They burst out into the alley behind the noodle shop. Gasping for breath, Lonnie looked pale. They're watching the archives now. That's new. This whole city's wired, Jace said, and we just tripped something. She stared at him. You said you worked maintenance, right? Yeah. Then we need to get under the pedestal. There's something there. Something they buried. Jace blinked. What do you mean? She hesitated. I had a second source. Disappeared 2 months ago. But before she vanished, she sent me this. Lonnie pulled out a crumpled printout from her coat. It showed a schematic below the pedestal platform area, marked restricted, biocontainment O2, not just the cage above. Something else was hidden beneath. When Jace returned home that night, he found his apartment door slightly ajar. He stood in the hall for a long time before entering. Nothing looked touched, nothing was taken except for the photo of his sister on the wall - missing dot, just a thumbtack left in its place and carved into the back of his door. Barely visible under the light was a new message. Last warning. The forbidden truth. Jace's fingers trembled as he stared at the carved words on his apartment door. Last warning. His heart hammered, not just with fear, but a fiery resolve. Whoever was watching him wanted silence, but he was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. He met Lonnie at their usual rundown cafe, the place smelling faintly of stale coffee and burnt toast. The crowd was sparse, shadows pooling in the corners. They exchanged wary glances before settling into a booth at the back. We need to get into the city archive, Lonnie said quietly, pulling out the schematic again. That restricted biocontainment below the pedestal. I want to know what's down there. Jace nodded. But after last night, it's clear they're watching us. If we try again, it'll be different. We need a plan. Lonnie leaned in, voice low. I have one. There's an old service tunnel running from the subway lines that leads beneath Central Square. It's mostly forgotten, unnoted. If we get in through there, we can avoid the drones. Jace swallowed hard. Sounds risky. She smirked. When has this ever been easy? 2 nights later, they met at the subway station, blending into the sparse late-night crowd. Jace's maintenance pass got them through the first checkpoint without a hitch. Then, under the flickering lights, they found the rusty service ladder, hidden behind a disused freight door. The tunnel was narrow and damp, echoing with distant drips of water. Their footsteps sounded loud in the silence. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified. Lonnie's handheld scanner buzzed occasionally, mostly false positives, but it kept them alert. After what felt like hours, they reached a reinforced metal hatch engraved with the city's seal and a warning. Biocontainment access authorized personnel only. Jace pulled out his pass, carefully overriding the lock with codes he'd memorized from his maintenance days. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with cold metal walls and blinking panels. They entered a biosecure chamber, half laboratory, half prison. In the center stood a large containment unit, similar to the alien cage above, but this one was empty. Monitors showed readouts for life signs. None detected. Jace's eyes caught the small pile of papers on a desk nearby. Lonnie grabbed them. Autopsy reports, experimental logs, photographs. One photograph showed a second alien identical in appearance to the one on the pedestal but lifeless, slumped against the cold floor. They killed this one, Jace said, voice cracking. Tortured, experimented on. Lonnie nodded grimly. The one above isn't the invader. It's a prisoner, a witness. Jace felt a sudden chill. Why keep it alive? Why cage it where everyone can see? To scare us, or to silence the truth, Lonnie said. She tapped the screen, bringing up encrypted files. The files revealed something shocking. Project Silent Dawn, a covert government initiative designed to provoke contact with alien species by sending false distress signals into space, then capturing any response to study and manipulate. Jace's head spun. They started this. More than that, Lonnie said, voice dropping. They controlled the narrative. The alien ship didn't attack. First it was shot down. The entire invasion story was fabricated. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The hiss of closing doors echoed through the chamber. Time to go, Lonnie whispered, grabbing the files. They raced through the corridors, alarms blaring behind them. As they neared the service tunnel exit, they spotted a squad of security officers blocking the path, armed and serious. No way out, Jace muttered. Lonnie pulled a small device from her pocket and tossed it at their feet. It exploded in a burst of smoke and sparks. Chaos erupted as they slipped past the distracted guards, diving into the dark tunnel, safe but shaken. They returned to Lonnie's apartment, barricading the door. A voice message blinked on Lonnie's old communicator. Her eyes widened as she pressed play. Jace, a familiar voice whispered, They're watching the cage, but not what's beneath it. If you want to survive, look deeper. Trust no one. The message ended abruptly. Jace looked at Lani. Who was that? She shook her head. I don't know. But we're in deeper than ever. Outside, the city's glow flickered under the watchful eyes of drones and cameras. The cage still stood in the plaza, a silent sentinel with secrets buried beneath. Jace's journey had only just begun. Beneath the cage, the cold metal beneath Central Square was more than just a hidden basement. It was a tomb. Jace's boots echoed softly as he crept through the dimly lit corridors beneath the city's grand pedestal. The place where the alien's cage loomed high above. His breath came slow and steady, but inside, his thoughts raced. Lonnie was missing, vanished without a trace since their last narrow escape. The message she left behind haunted him. They're watching the cage, but not what's beneath it. Now, beneath it, Jace was about to discover why. The air was thick with sterile chill and the faint hum of dormant machinery. Power cells blinked quietly, their lights reflecting off the steel walls like distant stars. He approached a heavy blast. Door labeled Biocontainment Unit, Tooth, the same name from Lonnie's schematic. Jace's fingers trembled. As he swiped his maintenance pass through the reader, the door hissed open, revealing a vast chamber that smelled faintly of antiseptic and old metal. In the center of the room stood a reinforced glass tank, fogged and cracked in places. Inside lay a figure, an alien identical to the one caged above, but this one was motionless, lifeless. Its silver skin was dulled, and its chest showed no signs of breath. Jace's throat tightened. He crouched beside the tank, staring down at the still form. Beside the tank, an autopsy report lay pinned to a clipboard. He grabbed it, scanning the details quickly. Cause of death: severe trauma and chemical exposure. Signs of prolonged experimentation and restraint. Neurological activity ceased 2 months prior to display of the captive alien. Above his heart sank. This one didn't survive. The alien in the cage wasn't a menace. It was the last witness. Jace moved toward a nearby terminal, fingers flying over the controls. Files unlocked one by one, revealing hours of security footage, medical logs, and research notes. He found what he feared. The experiments were not just scientifics, they were attempts to control, manipulate, and weaponize. They had taken a creature from another world, tried to turn it into a tool, a weapon. When it resisted, it was destroyed. The caged alien above wasn't the enemy. It was a survivor, forced to watch its kind be tortured and killed. A pang of guilt tore through Jace. How many times had humanity looked at the cage, whispered fearfully, and never wondered why it was there? Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered and dimmed. A mechanical drone swooped into view, its sensors locking on Jace immediately, heart pounding. He ducked behind the tank just as the drone emitted a shrill alarm. More drones poured in from the corridors, their searchlights slicing through the haze. Jace sprinted toward the maintenance ladder, ducking under scanners and avoiding tripwires. His breath came ragged as the mechanical buzz of the drones closed in. He climbed as fast as he could, emerging into the shadow of the pedestal, his limbs shaking. Above him, the caged alien was no longer standing still. It paced, slow and deliberate, its eyes locked onto Jace, filled not with rage, but a deep sorrow. Jace's gaze fell to its arm. There, faint but unmistakably, barcode etched deep into the metallic skin. Underneath the lines, a small, faded insignia, the symbol of the human. Militarily, a cold realization settled over him. This being was no stranger. It was their creation. Back in the safety of a hidden alley, Jace's mind raced. How could an alien have a human military insignia? Was it a prisoner, a spy, or something else entirely? And why had Lonnie disappeared? Determined, Jace pulled out his CUM device, calling contacts from his maintenance days. One name came up again and again. Dr. Elara Miles, a scientist rumored to have worked on secret bioengineering projects during the early days of Project Silent Dawn. Tracking Dr. Miles wasn't easy. Found her living off the grid in a dilapidated farmhouse on the city outskirts. She was older than he expected, eyes sharp but tired. When he confronted her with the photos and the barcode, she sighed deeply. I never wanted it to come to this, she said softly. But the project spiraled out of control. Dr. Miles explained that the alien was not entirely alien. It was a hybrid, part human DNA, part extraterrestrial samples recovered from deep space probes, engineered to be a scout, a messenger. but it developed sentience, empathy, and conscience no one planned for. When it tried to warn humanity about a greater threat lurking beyond the stars, the military silenced it. The cage was not a warning to the city. It was a prison to hide. A mistake. Jace's thoughts churned as Dr. Miles spoke. The story was bigger than a caged alien. It was about trust and fear. She looked at him, voice steady. If you free it, you risk everything. But if you don't, humanity will remain blind. Back at the plaza, Jace stood beneath the looming cage. The crowd had long since dispersed. The alien's eyes met his again. This time they held a silent plea. Knew what he had to do. He would find a way to release it. But first, he had to survive what was coming next. The human experiment. The night air was heavy with tension as Jace slipped through the shadows, his mind racing with Dr. Miles' revelation. The alien in the cage. His cage was not a foreign invader, but a hybrid, part human, part something else. A product of ambition, fear, and dangerous experiments cloaked behind government secrecy. He couldn't shake the weight of the barcode etched into the alien's arm and the faded military insignia beneath. The truth was uglier than he had imagined. This was not just an alien captive. It was the embodiment of a human mistake. Back in his apartment, Jace spread out the documents Dr. Miles had given him. Research notes, genetic sequences, and video logs showing experiments he wished he could forget. He learned that the project, called Silent Dawn, had been a covert attempt to create advanced scouts using human DNA spliced with extraterrestrial materials. The goal to give humanity an edge in an increasingly uncertain universe. But the hybrids were more than just biological weapons. They were sentient, emotional, capable of empathy and pain. When one of them, this very alien, tried to warn humanity about a far greater threat hidden in the stars, the military labeled it a danger. They caged it, turned it into a spectacle, a warning to the public to quell panic. Jace shook his head, stomach churning. They made a monster out of a messenger. Determined to free the alien, Jace reached out to trusted contacts within city core systems. Using his maintenance clearance, he hacked into the security protocols around the pedestal's containment unit. Every second felt like a heartbeat. The control panel blinked, waiting for authorization codes. JACE entered the overrides. Dr. Miles had provided codes that bypassed the energy cage's containment fields. The system protested with alarms, lights flashing red, but the cage's energy barriers flickered. Outside, the city was quiet, unaware of the unfolding drama beneath its feet. Suddenly, the alarm screeched into life. Jace's cum crackled. Unauthorized access detected. Security drones en route. He slammed the final code into the console, watching as the energy cage shimmered and dissolved. The alien stepped out, tall, graceful, with eyes that held sadness and hope in equal measure. It looked at Jace without hostility. Instead, it extended a long, trembling hand. Jace hesitated before taking it. In that moment, images flooded his mind, memories that were not his own. The alien's creation, the suffering it endured, the humans it trusted, and the betrayal. "I am called Saran," the being whispered, voice melodic yet distant. "I was created to protect your world, but I was caged for trying to save it." Jace swallowed hard. "Why did you try to warn us?" Saren's eyes glistened. "Because something terrible is coming. The breach I tried to signal. It is real, and it threatens more than just your city. It threatens all life." Jace looked out at the city skyline, feeling the weight of her words. He realized this was bigger than any of them had imagined. As security forces closed in, Saren activated a small device in ancient star map etched with coordinates and warnings. "Broadcast this," Saren said urgently. "Let the truth be known." Jace nodded, heart pounding. He hacked into the city's broadcast tower, sending the encrypted data across every channel. Within minutes, the world was watching. The truth about Project Silent Dawn, the hybrid alien. Cover-up. The city erupted in chaos. Protests surged. Government officials scrambled to respond, and the military tried to control the narrative. But it was too late. The veil of secrecy had been torn as dawn broke. Jace stood beside Saren, where the cage once stood. The alien's eyes searched the horizon. "I must leave now," Saron said softly. "My purpose is complete." Jace felt a pang of loss but nodded. "Will you come back?" he asked. Saren smiled faintly. "Perhaps, when humanity is ready." With that, she turned and walked into the light, disappearing among the stars. Jay watched her go, heart heavy but hopeful. The lesson was clear. Sometimes, the greatest enemies we face are not from beyond the stars, but from the fears we carry within ourselves. The awakening. The sky was still dark when Jace returned to Central Square, the chill of the early morning biting through his jacket. The pedestal where the alien cage had stood was empty now, a hollow reminder of the secrets it had once concealed. The city was waking, unaware of the revolution that had just begun. The broadcast from the previous night had spread like wildfire. Across every screen, every device, the truth was out. Project Silent Dawn, the hybrid alien, the cover-up.jace, walked slowly through the empty plaza, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on his shoulders. Memories of the alien's face, of Saren's eyes filled with sorrow, hope, and something ineffably human flickered in his mind. Suddenly, his cum crackled to life. It was a message from an unknown sender. The screen illuminated with a flickering image, soft, almost dreamlike. It was the alien. "I wanted to show you something." Saren's voice echoed, calm and melodic. The screen filled with visions, memories, not hers but shared through an empathic connection. Jace saw the moment of her creation, the blend of human and extraterrestrial DNA, woven with care and science. He witnessed the kindness of a nurse, a human woman who had treated Saren with compassion when she was just a child in the lab, a being still learning what it meant to feel. He saw the moment Saren realized the true purpose of Project Silent Dawn, not to protect humanity, but to control it. And finally, he saw the alien's desperate attempt to warn Earth of the looming threat, a silent invasion hidden in the folds of space-time. The message ended with Saren's voice. "Fear blinds us, it cages us, but empathy frees us. Remember that, Jace." The connection cut, leaving Jace staring at the empty plaza, feeling both smaller and more significant than ever before. Days passed, and the city changed. The government's tight grip loosened under public pressure. Investigations were launched, Project Silent Dawn dismantled. The media swarmed, exposing corruption and lies. But beyond the headlines, something deeper shifted. Jace found himself visited by people from all walks of life, scientists, activists, ordinary citizens inspired by the courage of the alien who refused to be silenced. He spoke to crowds, sharing the story of Saren and the lessons she left behind. That true strength comes not from fear or domination, but from understanding and connection. One evening, standing on the rooftop of his apartment building, Jace looked up at the stars, feeling a strange peace. The void that had once seemed so vast and unknowable now felt different, less frightening, more alive. He whispered into the night, "Thank you." And somewhere, far beyond the reaches of Earth's atmosphere, Saren drifted through the cosmos, a beacon of hope and warning. Her mission had ended, but the story was only beginning. The lesson: fear can cage us, imprison us in stories we tell ourselves to avoid the unknown. But empathy, true, open-hearted empathy, can break those cages wide open. Humanity's greatest challenge is not the aliens outside, but the walls within.